This conference will now be recorded.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the meeting over. Are we able to approve the minutes without a quorum?
No.
Okay. Table that till the next meeting. First item then would be the TIP amendment.
Right. I don't see Rick on here. Maybe he is on here and I am just struggling to see. But hello to everyone that is virtual. And I guess we'll just go ahead as planned. So we cannot approve the minutes because we do not have a quorum here in person. And apparently we don't have a PDF here in person either. So that's unfortunate. Hoping that was the admit button. I just had my vision checked, I swear. I'm just apparently too far away from this screen. But anyway, I guess I don't have anything to show you, so we'll just talk through this. So there's a proposed TIP amendment that was requested by VDOT, basically to move some of the funding from maintenance from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2021 so they can utilize it now. This is just more of an informational item. We have duly advertised in the news in advance on our website and in person. So don't need y'all to do anything about that unless anyone has any discussion or objection.
Nope.
Okay.
I guess Philip is not here.
Philip is not here. Philip is on childcare duty, unfortunately, today. So I will take it away. Essentially, Virginia legislature approved a new program called the Transit Ridership Incentive Program, which supports low-income areas and also allows for improved regional connectivity of transit. So GLTC will be submitting an application in two parts. The first part would be to make fares free on certain routes. They didn't specify the routes at this time. And the second portion, like I said, it's two parts, so you can apply for both, would be for increased regional connectivity for an additional Route 4 bus, which links together the airport, the Amtrak station, and the Virginia Breeze stop. So again, just for your information, we don't have any action to take on that. I do see Hope on here. Hope is, Brian Booth was the general manager of GLTC and recently moved on to another transit agency. But Hope is the assistant general manager for the time being. Hope, if there's anything you want to add about this application, that would be great.
Sure. Not much to add. As far as the routes, we are looking at Route 2 as well as 1A and B to make fare free because those are the lowest income areas of the city. We're crunching the numbers on that, and it looks like we should be able to do it for those areas.
Great.
Okay. Next would be the electronic meeting policy.
Okay, so last time we were here, we talked a little bit about the electronic meeting policy, and the committee had asked if we could see if there was any other flexibility that we could provide. So we went back to our attorneys to see if there was any other flexibility, and there's not, but there is a clarification point. So it does require a quorum of members to be physically present, that we talked about last time. But as long as there's a quorum physically present, you would be allowed to vote electronically, which we had confused last time. So we still need enough people in the room, but then people could still participate electronically. The reasons for being able to come on electronically are still the same, which are temporary disability, a personal matter, which you can only use up to 25% of meetings, a family member's medical condition, or if your residence is more than 60 miles. out of the meeting location, which most of us do not have that problem. So the Transportation Policy Board has recommended that they approve this, but at the last meeting, there was no quorum, so we couldn't approve it. There is another meeting next week where they hope to approve this. So any discussion would be appreciated, or comments for them.
Sounds like it's pretty straightforward.
Hey, Ada, this is Jeremy. I was the one that brought up and had questions last time. I appreciate the clarification, and I think that it's good to have the policy in place.
So what excuse are you using today?
Ada said that the policy hadn't been adopted, so I don't need an excuse yet.
Well, in that case, you're not officially here and we don't have to listen to you anyway.
So yeah, I mean, if we don't adopt anything, then you can't participate virtually at all, and we don't have the Zoom option. So probably best for the policy board to adopt it, and then at least there's some provisions. You know, there has been talk from our state partners about maybe the legislature adopting something, the General Assembly, but so far nothing. So my hopes are not high on that, but maybe our state partners will feel a little bit differently. So any other discussion on that? Okay.
All right, how are we on the LRTP project prioritization?
Sure. So we have with us, I see Bill and Phil are on the call. These are our friends from EPRPC. They're our on-call consultant that has helped us through the LRTP process for the past 2 years, really. And so Bill or Phil, I'm not sure which one of you is going to take it away, but be my guest. And if you'd like to share your screen, you can.
Hey, good morning. This is Bill. We were waiting on Will to join us. I think he's running a little late from another meeting, but Phil's going to get us started with the discussion. Phil, are you able to share your screen?
I'll need to pull up the presentation.
Okay.
While they're doing that, just a couple of informational items. At the bottom of the agenda, there's going to be a webinar next week. I can't remember what day of the week. I think it's Wednesday, September 15th, about integrating equity and inclusion into transportation planning. And it's going to be hosted by the Virginia Association of MPOs that we're a part of. I've been working with a couple of other folks from across the state and other MPOs to put this on. And it'll be a talk by Charles Brown, who is very immersed in VDOT planning for equity and transportation. And he's got a really great perspective. So if anyone's interested, it'll be part of a 3-part series. So there'll be additional webinars in the future, but this is just the first one to kick it off. Other than that, we will be getting a new finance director sometime soon. Rosalie will be retiring. So excited for her, probably sometime around the turn of the year. And we don't have anyone in mind for that yet, but the posting is available. And also Philip, our senior planner, will be moving on to Wyoming. So his job is not posted yet, but probably will be in the near future. So excited for both of them, and sad to see them both go, really. That's all I have.
Are there any matters from the committee?
Well, it looks like we've got Will now. Will is our main presenter.
Yeah, hi, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties with my connection, but finally was able to get on. Apologize. Are you all ready to get started on this presentation? Ada, is there any introduction on this?
Nope, I gave a little bit of a speech already, so all you.
Okay, great.
And Will, I've got the slides open, so.
Oh, you do?
show
Great,
those for
okay.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much. It's great to be joining you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. But what we're doing is giving an overview to the constrained long-range plan process here. We worked with you all on the 2045 LRTP. I want to do a quick refresher on that, talk about the constrained long-range transportation plan. And then what we did is Phil and myself looked at all of the LRTPs across Virginia, of the 15 MPOs, and try to find some best practices of what we can see across the Commonwealth. With the long-range transportation plan, we wrapped up that process in September of 2020, last year. We worked with you all through an 18-month process, and that long-range transportation plan, as you all know, identifies what are the transportation needs in the region, and then lines up projects to those needs to address them, sets goals, performance measures. And the main focus of the plan is really the project list. That process, as I mentioned, the policy board adopted that in September of 2021. It was called actually the Connect Central Virginia. If any of you were not here during that process, that special title actually went to its purpose of connecting the three major regional plans of the LRTP, the Rural Long Range Transportation Plan, as well as the CEDS plan, or the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies Plan. It was really intended to be, a one-stop shop for the region that shows the overlap between transportation and economic needs in the region. The long-range plan, the main part of that is as I mentioned, the project list, which includes 90 projects that we scored and evaluated, included in a visioning list at the end of that document. It also includes 18 standalone bike and pedestrian projects, as well as 12 additional locations, which were not quite ripe yet for inclusion into the LRTP, but we had identified for further study. So the issue with that process is that as we're trying to assemble the constrained long-range plan, the constrained list of projects at the end of that plan, central office was still working through the anticipated funds for the planning horizon. They released that, I believe it was December of 2020, so just a few months after the required adoption date for the long-range transportation plan. So the TPO adopted the plan without having truly a fiscally constrained list of projects at the end. It was a prioritized list of all the projects identified, and they were all included in the vision plan at this moment, whereas the constrained list was just those projects that are currently entered into the TIP, as there is a requirement of, if a project's in the TIP, it has to be listed in the long-range plan. So we wanted to make sure that we did all we could for those projects to make sure that they can still proceed as planned. So the constrained long-range plan, the CLRP portion of the region's transportation plan, it is required through federal planning regulations to have a fiscally constrained list of projects. And the intention of that is to have a plan that is not just a wish list, but realistic. And it looks at the assumed dollar amounts for the region over the planning horizon, and then compares that to the cost of the highest priority projects in the area. And it's considered to be fiscally constrained when you have a list of projects with their costs that is equal to the assumed amount of funding that you might receive within that planning horizon. So for the 2045 plan, that's the year 2045. And so that process of developing a constrained budget is a little harder, admittedly harder these days, given the state's adoption of SmartScale. And so through SmartScale, that has fundamentally changed how projects are funded in Virginia. But when we looked through MPOs across the state, we did find that each one of them have adapted to SmartScale in similar, but also some distinctive ways as we look across the Commonwealth once again. We have 15 MPOs across Virginia. And we actually looked at every single one of those and tried to identify what are the common practices across Virginia. We looked at every single one of their LRTPs. And we did find that, again, there are a lot of similarities. There are some differences as well, though, which are worth noting, which we'll discuss here. So for the MPOs, VDOT and DRPT does forward estimates for the constrained budget. Some MPOs just take that estimate as is with no revisions to it, and they take that figure and use it as their constrained budget and fit their projects within the assumed dollar figures for the horizon year. Whereas others actually did have some additional methodologies on how to detail out that constrained budget. So on the MPOs, again, I'd mentioned that we had reviewed all 15. I'm going to pull out a few which were in the memo and also in this PowerPoint here. Bristol, we thought, was a good example of a few of these methodologies. In terms of identifying the constrained budget, they actually had four different categories, and they did include some methodologies of predicting or identified a dollar figure for those different categories of their constrained long range plan. We had identified actually 5 categories of road projects, intersections, bike ped projects, transit, and they even actually included bridge projects in theirs. So through their process, they looked at the first couple rounds of SmartScale, as well as other funding programs, and try to find the trend of how much money have they received through. With VDOT came up with assumed figures over the 2045 planning horizon. So you can see some of that breakout of funding over on the right here, where they had SmartScale versus bike ped projects and so forth. And for each one of those, they did look at funding programs under those categories. Now, another thing that we found, some of the MPOs across Virginia, was rather than having one singular dollar figure for the planning horizon, whether it be 2040 or 2045, now admittedly, most of them are now onto the 2045 horizon being updated. So some of them used a single figure for that time. Others, including Bristol as an example, actually broke that out into the first segment would be actually already funded in some cases, so the TIP projects, and then the others were incrementally. So you can see another example of that, where by breaking out the constrained list into these time increments, you can also include in that a cost index increase over those years to give you a more precise way of estimating the cost of projects and the funds that might be available during that time. So that first increment is the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, funded. And then you had your mid and long term. Those are the 15 used that. It was Bristol, Richmond, Fredericksburg area MPO, and others. And when you look into the actual project,
Hey, Will, can I stop you for a second? Your audio has cut out almost completely.
oh, okay.
It keeps cutting out, but now we're hearing nothing.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, hey. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay, great. I apologize for that. Again, having some technical issues here. So you can see this example of that time horizon broken out in the column that's highlighted red. So on the next slide, we got subdividing by mode or topic. So several of the MPOs, they did divide out their constraint list by mode or topic. I mentioned Central Virginia had theirs broken out by, they broke out bike and pedestrian as one subcategory of the constrained plan. And that can help to emphasize certain modes. Like for example, we have what we had intended to do on the LRTP process 2045 is actually identify out the bike ped projects on their own to help emphasize those projects. But again, we hadn't gotten the constrained budget to that point in the process. In terms of project selection, again, there's a lot of similarity, but some variability as well. A lot of the communities used a very similar process to what we had in terms of scoring in some way, or at least ranking projects through some sort of performance-based measure. The process you used for the 2045 was pretty robust. It had 16 performance measures and scoring cards on each project, which is a very detailed process, more detailed than many. But it was kind of a similar concept, at least through most of the MPOs, of scoring those projects and then the highest priority projects, fitting those and arranging them into the constrained budget of how much money they assumed to be receiving during the planning horizon. Others left a lot more discretion through the project selection process, where there might have been some performance measure evaluation, but there are other through the committee and through the policy board, other considerations as they were trying to select projects for the constrained list. And then in terms of conclusions, hopefully you got all that. Sorry that my audio was cutting out, but the main takeaways is, with the constrained plan here, we do have a figure from VDOT that we had received from central office. And what we, in terms of looking to do, is to develop a process by examining that figure. And we did think that the project scoring methodology, the scoring sheets that we used over that time last year in 2019, fits in perfectly, because that's what we had intended to do, is have a constrained project list at the end of that process. So that is all set up for us, and we're ready to go once we have some methodology divided out or identified. What we would recommend is dividing the constrained project, the constrained budget up by modes to help emphasize, especially bike and pedestrian modes. And then having time increments. We felt, as we were reviewing the LRTPs, does provide you all with additional information and tools as you're looking at your projects and really thinking out of a more detailed view of your projects and potential costs. In terms of next steps, we have, again, any feedback that you have today at this meeting, we'd love to hear and take that back to our process as we're fine-tuning a methodology for Ada and staff. We're also, once we get that structure together, we'll be working with TPO staff on really fine-tuning that, obviously considering any comments that you all may have. We'll be reviewing that with you and implementing that methodology to come up with a constrained project list, which you'll be seeing later in this process as an amendment to the long-range transportation plan. So with that said, I would be happy to answer any questions or any additional comments at this time.
All's quiet.
Okay.
Will, do you have a date in mind that people can send comments by? Or
Yeah, so I was thinking by the end of this month, so by the end of September, if we could receive comments. For us, that would be helpful, and Ada will be sending additional information to you in terms of a draft methodology. If you would like to share that with the committee, but any comments that we can receive by the end of this month would be very helpful for us as we pull that methodology together.
Yeah, I think some extra time to digest for those of us who haven't had our coffee yet would be helpful.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And something to be thinking about too, as we talk about trying to decide whether we break down the list of projects by mode. Last time around, it seemed that we had very limited response in bike ped projects with regional significance. You know, I mean, there's plenty of bike ped projects that can be implemented, but ones with regional significance would be pretty important to kind of gather a good list of, especially if we're going to, you know, come up with a prioritization for those and put them into the long range plan. So just something to be thinking about as we go along. You know, we're not really in that stage yet. We're just still in the methodology stage, but it doesn't hurt to have extra time to think about it and keep our eyes open for regional projects.
Yeah, sure. And if there are, I know that going through the 2045 process, you know, again, if there's any additional bike and pedestrian areas that could use additional study, that might not be a bad thing to put in the plan. As I mentioned, we had the 14 projects that weren't quite ripe for inclusion, but they're listed there for the TPO to review as they're updating their UPWP each fiscal year. So if there's any bike and pedestrian corridors that could use additional study, which could then result in bike pedestrian projects of regional significance, that might be something to include in the plan if there's anything that we did not include in the September adopted version of the plan.
All right, anything else? Are there any other business items? Any matters from the committee? If there's no objection, then we're adjourned.
Thank you very much, folks.
Great, thank you.